This is Lesson 1.3.2, Pharmaceutical Regulation. In this lesson, we'll discuss more of the details of receiving regulatory approval for new pharmaceutical innovations. First comes obtaining FDA approval for pharmaceuticals, or Food and Drug Administration approval. There are four main phases to any FDA approval. And the standard overall for approval is demonstrating that a new drug is both safe and effective. Prior to an application, there's what is known as a preclinical period, which lasts approximately 3 years. During this time, there's laboratory and animal testing. And the purpose of this period is to assess the safety and the biological activity of the new compound or drug. After the preclinical period, it's possible to file an investigational new drug application. The IND or INDA shows the results of any previous experiments as well as the chemical structure of the new compound and how it's thought to work when taken by patients. After this, the next four phases of the approval process begin. Phase 1, which lasts approximately 1 year, has an emphasis on establishing the safety of the drug. And there are usually clinical trials using human subjects, without the disease, but with small samples to demonstrate that the drug is safe. During this time, the drug's pharmacokinetics and pharmacological effects are obtained to set a baseline. In the second phase, which lasts approximately 2 years, there's an emphasis on determining the effectiveness of the drug. During this period, controlled studies of slightly larger populations of approximately 100 to 300 volunteer patients, note these are people that actually have the disease that is expected to be treated with the new drug, are conducted. During this time, however, safety is continued to be evaluated, even though there's an emphasis on determining the effectiveness of the drug. Safety is always measured as well. Phase 3 begins after Phase 2 is complete and lasts approximately 3 years. This involves larger sample clinical trials, anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 or more patients, and are very expensive and highly controlled clinical trials. It also includes a variety of populations, both healthy and sick, and a variety of dosages to help to continue understand the safety and effectiveness of the drug when it's used in a variety of ways. Finally, Phase 4 is after the drug receives approval and is being marketed, the drug is continued to be evaluated. So at this point, there's not usually controlled trials, but rather there's observational data or registry data that's being collected that can be used to go back and assess both safety and effectiveness once the drug is marketed to a large population. Following completion of the first 3 phases, that's Phase 1, 2, and 3 of the clinical trials, the company will analyze all of its data and file a new drug application with the FDA. The data that they collect during the first 3 phases needs to demonstrate, as I mentioned before, the drug is both safe and effective. The NDA contains all of the scientific information that the company has gathered, which means that these NDAs can run 100,000 pages or more. By law, the FDA is then allowed 6 months to review the NDA. If and when the FDA approves the NDA, the drug is available to be marketed, which means that it's available for physicians to prescribe. However, the company must continue to submit periodic reports to the FDA, including any cases of adverse reactions and appropriate quality control records. So once the drug has become available and is being marketed, it's still the company's responsibility to monitor how the drug is being used in the population, ensure that it's being produced in a high-quality environment, and make sure that there's not a large amount or any adverse reactions to the drug which were not identified in any of the clinical trials. For some medicines, the FDA requires additional studies, or phase 4 studies, to evaluate the long-term effects that could not be determined in any of the clinical trials because there was not a long enough time period or a large enough population. Because patents give protection from direct competition for up to 20 years, new drugs almost always have a patent. However, the FDA approval process can take 8 to 10 years or more, thus the effective patent life once the drug is being marketed is only 10 to 12 years approximately. After the patent expires, a generic drug can enter the market. These drugs compete directly with the original drug or branded drug that was the first to the market. Generic drug competitors have a shortened or abbreviated new drug application. And the first generic market has 100 days of exclusive marketing, which means it has 180 days as the only generic, and then after which point additional generics can enter the market. So first there's the brand drug, which has whatever its effective patent length is after it's received approval, approximately 10 years. At that point, the generic can enter, and the first generic has approximately 6 months of being the only generic, at which point all other marketers or all other pharmaceutical manufacturers can enter. The generics only need to demonstrate that the drug is bioequivalent or has the same effectiveness in the same mechanism as the drug that's already on the market. They don't need to reestablish that they're safe and effective as long as they can demonstrate that it's the same drug. An additional note about phase 4 or post-marketing. Phase 4 studies assess how the drug works in a real-world setting. The FDA does not currently have clear policies for addressing all the post-market drug safety information collection. There's not a systematic tracking of ongoing safety issues with all drugs, and reporting of adverse events is voluntary in most cases unless the FDA has required some sort of official follow-up data collection. In response to some previous cases of issues with drugs on the market, the FDA has created a Drug Safety Oversight Board. However, it's important to remember that once the drug is on the market, it can be used or prescribed by physicians for more than it was approved for. So, an FDA approval is for the treatment of a specific condition or disease. Consider what we'll call our test pill or new drug, beta, which may be approved for weight loss. However, it may be known from clinical trials or from other sources that the same drug can also be used to treat depression. Although the pharmaceutical company can't market the drug to treat depression, doctors can prescribe the drug to treat depression, which means that the overall population that's receiving the drug is not the same as the one that it was necessarily tested for in the clinical trials, which means that the phase 4 studies can collect data on a lot more instances of how the drug works and in a variety of populations. It's important to remember this when using any data from post-marketing studies for a technology assessment. It's important to understand the population that's using the drug and why.